Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. Hello, we did it. It's Friday. So congratulations. Today what I wanted to talk about is this book that I ran across. I did not read the book, so just a forewarning. But what I did was I don't even know where I ran across it. The book is called What You Are is Where You Were When by Dr. Morris Massey. And I listened instead to some videos that are posted on YouTube that have him talking about this concept. And I also asked Chatty, my BFF, to summarize the book for me. And what I wanted to do was apply the concepts in the book to why recovery is challenging. Like, what are some of the obstacles, or maybe not obstacles, but mountains that we face in recovery? And this is any kind of recovery, in sobriety, in stroke recovery, vestibular recovery. Why is it so difficult to adjust? So another topic that I do want to talk about soon in another episode is why forced change is so difficult to understand and to tolerate. And I feel like that's really related. So I wanted to, though, start with this concept of you are what you were when. And it's really about this core idea that who you are today is largely shaped by when you were born, what was happening in the world, and what you experienced early in life. So Chatty gave me kind of a summary of this, and he starts with that there are these three key life periods, ages 0 to 7, which is like the imprint period. And that's when we are absorbing everything in our lives without really questioning it. What our family exposes us to, the environment that we're in, and authority around us really shapes our beliefs. You know, if you remember being in kindergarten, like whatever your teacher tells you, like that is okay, whatever you tell me. And I'm not going to get into, because it's not my experience, but I'm not going to get into the tragic experiences that some people have at these different periods of life. But you can imagine as you think through like these key life periods, how that affects the rest of your life. So I'm not going to talk about that because it's not my experience again, but what I am going to talk about is how I feel that these key periods of life affected me and how I walked through and am walking through recovery. So thinking about back then, what I remember of it between ages 0 and 7, I have some snapshots, as I call them, of when I was in kindergarten, and just feeling like so protected. I mean, I had a really lovely childhood. I really did. And everything, you know, during that time in your life, you think of everything is true. There is no deception. There is no ulterior motives. Like everything is true. And what we're told and what we experience creates the foundation of our values and our identity and our emotional responses. Um, and what I was also thinking about in relation to this is the invisible illnesses. And for me, like, did I have signs of depression and anxiety back then? I I definitely remember periods of anxiety when I was little. Little, like feeling very uncomfortable. I used to go to this place called the Apple House in Leesburg, and it was like, I mean, I was there, I think it was preschool. I think that's what it's called. And I remember, I remember being treated very kindly and lovingly, but I was extremely uncomfortable there. I didn't like it. I hated, like, I have this, ooh, it gives me the creeps. I have this memory of nap time, and we would all go into this room, and there were cots everywhere, and the lights were dim, and we had to lay on our cot and take a nap. And I just, I don't know why. It gets me like, it's so uncomfortable to me to think about. Nothing happened. I just remember not liking being there. But so I remember emotional responses from early on in my life. And I remember discomfort more than I remember joy. Um, and that's not to say I didn't feel joy. Like I have a memory of being in kindergarten and getting to, we had like um, times during the day where we got to play at different stations. And I remember getting to play at the kitchen station, and I loved it. I remember being so happy that I got to play with these amazing toys. So, I remember my emotional responses. But as I got older, the difficult stuff is what stayed with me, what kind of echoed, It's not that I don't remember the good stuff, but the bad stuff echoes, if you know what I mean. Okay, so there's that imprint period. Um, side note, so I also have this memory of being at the Apple House, and it was like 5:30, and it was dark outside, so it had to have been winter time. And I was waiting for my mom to pick me up, and we had this yellow Pontiac Sunbird, bright yellow Pontiac Sunbird car. Um, and I just remember waiting for that Pontiac Sunbird to like pull into the driveway. And while I was waiting, I got to eat two oatmeal cookies. And I remember just those cookies were the best cookies in the entire world. And while I ate the cookies, I had this desperate longing for my mom to pull in, and just be like, almost like, wondering if she was going to pull in. I mean, why would I think that? Of course she's going to pull in. She never didn't show up. But I just remember being desperate for my mommy. I loved my mommy, and I still do. So another big emotional response. Okay, so that's about 0 to 7. Of course, those aren't all my memories, but those are just some examples of like that imprint period. And then Chatty goes on to say that there's, from this book, as a summary of the book, that the second period, key life period, is ages 8 to 13. And so this is the modeling period. And this is when we begin to observe and imitate others. And doesn't that make sense? Like, I remember during that time looking at role models, like looking at my peers, like, I want to be more like her, or things that my mom does. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. Or my teachers. I have some great teachers. Well, one in particular that stands out in my head, and I still talk to her today on Facebook, and she knows who she is. She was my PE teacher. But there's these teachers that become like it was my mom away from home, who became this caretaker, and they become a role model. And that's where we start forming our behaviors based on what we see, how we act, how we respond. We really start mimicking or modeling other people. And I remember that mostly with my peers. My best friend back then, and I still talk to her today, although we've gone in completely different directions. I still, if I'm being completely honest, I still look at this woman as a peer that always seems to model what I want to be. It's interesting, isn't it? That the people in my life, at least, that became those models, those role models, continue to be those role models. And I am 51 years old, right, Bailey? 51 years old. So, it's interesting. I hadn't actually thought about that until now, that those people that became the role model in my life back then continue to be today. Um, and then moving on to the third key life period is ages 14 through 21. And that is, wow, that's a difficult time in life. And it seems like eternity. Ages 14 through 21 was wow, is all I can say. So this is the socialization period. And this is where peer influence becomes dominant. And this is where our identity is tested and shaped. And this is where we have the strong desire to fit in and belong, which is one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And that is, I feel like I feel like some of us, like just through observing like my experience and watching my peers, it's like some of us have a stronger desire than others to fit in and belong. Today, as I look at some of the younger folks, um, it's like today I notice more young folks who want to stand out rather than fit in. That's what it seems like to me. But I know that that was happening back then in the 80s as well, because I I was one that liked to stand out a little bit. Like I remember always wanting to have this crazy haircut. Like at one time I had my haircut where it was short, like really short on one side and really long on the other side. So it like went down in like a half of a V, like in the back. So I was crazy, pop star. I had this need to stand out. I would wear really bright colors, but that was kind of like an 80s thing anyway. So Maybe I wasn't actually standing out. Maybe I was fitting in, huh? But that's where ages 14 through 21, and this is interesting to me. That's when the final shaping of our beliefs and values occurs. And during that time, 14 to 21, was when my alcoholism was most apparently coming to surface. That was when I was in college, and that was when I was really trying to figure out where I was going, who I was. And that makes sense. Like as Chatty summarizes this book for me, that was when my identity was tested and shaped. And that was when that same discomfort that I felt when I was in preschool, when I was in kindergarten, that was when I felt that same discomfort was between the ages of 14 and 21. Um, yeah, I felt it during the modeling period, but I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like I felt it more in the first key period of life and the third key period of life. I think that safer place for me was between the ages of 8 and 13, when all I was doing was trying to imitate others, was trying to form behaviors based on what I see. But when I was really shaping beliefs and values, those were the most uncomfortable times, I think, in my life. Um, so the world now, so there's these key periods in life. Now add to the equation the world around you, um, and how culture, technology, and like social norms in combination with us trying to fit in and belong, right? Culture, social norms. Um, and then earlier on, when we're during the modeling period and when we're really trying to mimic our peers or our parents or our teachers, how the world around us was impacting them. And it's impacting them in a different way because different generations are going to be impacted differently by the world around them. And then we're impacting each other. So different generations begin to value different things and behave differently. I mean, this is fascinating to me, honestly. So when I, from the surface, look at, oh, these kids these days, or I look at my kids, I'm I'm looking at my kids from the lens of where I was when, rather than where they were when. So different generations value work, or authority or communication. Like we value those things differently. And this matters because many of my beliefs feel like the truth, while my kids' beliefs feel like the truth. But what they really are conditioned responses. And we operate on autopilot based on these learned patterns in our life. It's so much more complicated than I really gave it credit for. So then we've covered the key periods of life. we've covered the world around us. Now let's look at recovery, like the opportunity to change, the opportunity to question old beliefs or reevaluate learned behaviors. How do we how do we get to that point where we can start choosing differently? Um, and for me, what has given me that opportunity is my sobriety program. Not only in sobriety, but in stroke recovery and vestibular recovery also is the steps gave me an awareness, an inner awareness of who I was and who I didn't, the parts of me that I didn't want, the parts of me that I could let go with work. I could let go of them and I could hand them over. And in my case, hand them over to my higher power, which I was cultivating this belief. And I still am cultivating the belief. But my sobriety program has given me this awareness that I never had. And this book, as I've been listening to Dr. Morris Massey and reading over so again, listening to Dr. Morris Massey on YouTube, you can find him. If you just Google or look on YouTube, You Are What You Were When by Dr. Morris Massey. You can hear a little bit more about what he has to say. He's got some offshoots from that main topic as well, but it's all really fascinating to me. So I was given this awareness through my sobriety program. And that awareness gave me the power to start choosing differently. I started to understand that just because I used to do things that way doesn't mean that I have to. Um, the habits that I have had in my life felt so automatic. And what I learned in my program, and I talk about it all the time, probably you're probably sick of hearing it, is the idea of the pause. And that's because that pause puts a space between what I would automatically do and what, if I think about it, could be a more thoughtful response. And I think that the pause reinforces the awareness and gives us the ability to break patterns. Um, we're shaped by our past. But what it felt like to me is that I was limited by my past, that I walked around feeling like I was a victim of circumstances, that my life couldn't be any different than the way that it was unfolding for me. And the way that it was unfolding was that I was an alcoholic and there was nothing I could do about it. And that disease was once again going to limit me even more than the depression limits me, even more than the anxiety limits me. Now I have a disease called alcoholism. And so now I can't go to happy hours. I can't hang out with the friends I used to have. Like, I'm limited by it. But all of that stuff, all of those experiences in my life, the what has shaped me is not supposed to limit me. What it's supposed to do is provide a foundation for choices. And growth starts when I recognize that I have been conditioned to behave a certain way, that I have been conditioned to think a certain way. But I can pause. I can pause and choose what behavioral habits I want to keep and which ones I want to change. So remember today, like as you're walking through today, think about the fact that whatever happens today, you are not just reacting to today. If somebody cuts you off, if somebody rubs you the wrong way, taking a moment to not react and pause and think about what you're going to say or how you're going to act or how you're going to behave. Remember that your reaction is not just to today. You're reacting to everything that has shaped you before you knew you were even being shaped. You know? You know? I mean, it's really fascinating that a moment in time that I respond to is not the only thing I'm responding to. I'm responding to everything that has made me who I am today and how that has influenced that specific situation, person, conversation. And I think it's really an amazing concept. So that was enjoyable to share about. So thanks for joining me today, and I will talk to you next time.